Is the jury really going to buy the idea that this woman stabbed herself in the neck? I mean, how would you even do that? I guess we find out today. Hi, folks. Tony DeWitt again with another video on the law. Remember, I don't dispense legal advice here, and this is what we're talking about today. I had been wondering all along what the defense's aims were throughout this trial, and it looked to me like they had a lot of air let out of their tires on Monday. First, they tried to prevail on a motion for acquittal, saying that the state had not proved its case. It made me wonder if they had short-term memory loss. The judge listened patiently as the defense sugarcoated the evidence and downplayed large parts of it. The judge should, as I understood it, believe everything that Collins said to other people that wasn't inculpatory and disbelieve that huge universe of things that made it look like he was the guy who did what was charged in this case. The judge wasn't having any of it and said point blank that the motion for acquittal was denied, that the state had made prima facie cases on all of the charges that were brought. I would have had just one question before he started arguing that motion if I'd been the judge, and that would have been, are you serious? Then the defense went about promoting its real defense, that of self-defense in this case, specifically the idea that the decedent stabbed herself or that it happened when he was trying to defend himself from her. But to get there, they needed to do a little bit of damage control. And by that, I mean attacking through their only witness, the other witnesses, the decedent, and pretty much all of the evidence that was put out in this case. That's because all week long the jury heard that Colin wasn't exactly the nicest fellow in the world, that he had a penchant for violence, that he was disrespectful, and that he had already committed at least one killing. I don't think they phrased it as murder, but they phrased it as a killing. Now it's the defense's turn, and their aim was to make Kathy Griffith's grave into a septic tank. They dumped a ton of feces on that poor woman's memory, unbelievably, through her own mother. But I want you to watch the testimony and see if you notice anything odd about the way Susan Deathman is testifying here. In this first clip, she slings a ton of mud at her ex-husband who testified for the state.
What about, are you aware of his relationship with any of the 3 children that you had with him?
He didn't have a relationship once he was not granted custody of John Paul. He didn't want Kathy, considered Kathy to be damaged goods. He only sued for John Paul.
Okay, but what was his relationship like with his children after the divorce?
He didn't have a relationship at all until Kathy divorced and she reached out to her dad.
When did Kathy divorce her husband and the father of Colin and Christopher?
2019, if I remember correctly. It was like December of 2019 when they filed. And I think it took a couple months for the divorce to actually take place.
Okay. Now, we saw pictures of Robert Willantis on a trip with Kathy.
Yes.
Tell the jury about that trip, what you know about it.
So Kathy wanted to meet the biological Robert's mother, the biological grandmother, because Kathy had many medical problems. So she asked me, she said, Dad said he'll take me to California to meet his mom. They lived in Anaheim. The mom lived in Anaheim, California, but you'll have to pay for it. And I said, okay. I said, just please try not to do anything too expensive. And I'll see what points I can use for the hotels and fly over there You guys don't need to rent a car. You can use your dad's car if it can make it to California. If not, then we'll get a rental car.
So, Ms. Stepman, did you in fact pay for Kathy to go on this trip with Robert Willantis?
Yes.
In this next clip, the sainted grandmother here tells the tale of Kathy Griffith's multiple self-harm attempts.
So that was one attempt. What about other attempts that you were aware of?
So the second attempt was when she was in Port Charlotte. I had to go over the fence and open the sliding glass door, and she was in her bed, all dressed in black, and with a revolver in her hand.
And had she done anything with any medications that time?
She had overdosed on the oxycodone.
Did she end up going to the hospital that time?
Yes.
Any other attempts that you remember?
Yes. There was another attempt with oxycodone again about 4 months later.
Okay, I get it. She had mental issues, but just because she attempted in the crying out for attention mode multiple self-harm incidents, that doesn't mean she was violent. People who have a penchant for committing self-harm tend to harm themselves, not other people. And it certainly doesn't make it okay for her son to murder her. Next, even though she hasn't testified in this case, the defense attorney asks her mom about her reputation for truthfulness.
The jury has heard a lot about some things that Kathy claimed that were maybe not true. How would you describe Kathy's reliability or her reputation for truthfulness?
Objection, Your Honor.
The objection here prompted a 6-minute sidebar, and when the lawyer came back, she asked something of a different question.
Ms. Stepman, I'm going to go through some individual things and ask you about them, okay? First, I'm going to approach with defense exhibit number 17 as it's been marked. Do you recognize?
Yes, I do.
I'd ask that defense exhibit number 17 be admitted into evidence.
Objection. No objection, Judge.
In this text from June 27th of 2024, Kathy says that she was here and pressing charges going to 77 Hewlett Drive. That's your address, correct?
That was the address in Auburndale.
Okay. To check on you and to pick up Inaki for charges of attempted murder and assault against you. Meaning she's claiming that Inaki actually tried to murder you, correct?
Yes.
Is that true?
No.
It appears the court required her to ask more specific questions about specific instances of untruthfulness. But let's be honest here, Kathy never lied in this case. She isn't a witness, and her reputation for truth-telling is completely irrelevant. I'm having trouble understanding how that gets in front of the jury. And if nothing else, it undercuts her argument that Kathy was violent because she supposedly threatened her son with a gun. But if she was a liar, then clearly she didn't mean it. And I don't think she did it to begin with, because again, the only way you get to she threatened her son with a gun, or that she handed the gun to her son and told him to kill her, is you have to believe Colin, what Colin said. And again, for me, that's just a bridge too far. So, the defense puts a text in front of the witness and has her read it. She reads the text into the record and then asks if the text was a true statement. The woman answers no. Again, so what? She lied in the text? Does that require the death penalty be enforced by her son? Are you serious? Where are you going with this? This would appear to just be, let's dirty up the decedent and make it look like she had it coming. And that's really not a very good defense. The court then dismisses the jury and, out of the jury's presence, holds a hearing on the state's objection to reputation evidence. Here's what the Florida rule on reputation evidence says. When evidence of a character of a person of a trait that is a person's character is admissible, proof may be made by testimony about that person's reputation. Specific instances of conduct. When character or a trait of character of a person is an essential element of a charge, claim, or defense, proof may be made of specific instances of that person's conduct. Well, the defense here is self-defense, so the only basic requirement would be that you have somebody who has knowledge of these of individual instances of conduct where she was violent. For whatever reason, probably because there's no dispute that Colin was there and supposedly this happened in self-defense, the judge allowed specific instances of conduct to come in, but not reputation generally, principally because the only people who had that idea about her were the people who were in her family. And sometimes family judges you harsher than strangers. Over the course of the morning, the grandmother testified that her daughter was alienated from other family members, so how would they know what her reputation is? That she was a liar, that she had once put a gun in Colin's hand and told him to shoot her. And of course, like I said, the only information for that had to be from Colin. He's the only person who had a self-interest in saying that and in her believing it so he could go live with her. It didn't look to me like that was very powerful. Oh, the other thing, she testified that she did not like having to get up the crack of dawn to take Colin to school, as pretty much every parent everywhere has said at one time or another. Now, cross-examination was wide-ranging but not particularly effective. The state was going easy on her because she lost a child and is now looking at losing a grandchild. One of the better questions, though, related to fear. Colin had already killed once when he came back to Florida. Why weren't you more afraid of him? And I don't think the answer did her very much good. And then we got this.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about Kathy. Now, it sounded like she had some mental problems. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, you would probably agree that it didn't help that she got impregnated when she was just a child, correct?
She was 13. She got impregnated when she ran away from the Hope House, and they found her in the hotel with her boyfriend. It didn't help that her father called her F bitches and that she was damaged goods, and he didn't want anything to do with her.
Ma'am, it sounds like you're really quick to try to throw dirt on your dead daughter. Would you agree with that?
No, not at all. My dead daughter did the best that she could. We have a problem in this country with addressing mental health. We all know that. And that's what she had. She had mental health issues. At times, she was the greatest person on the world.
The greatest person on the world? Well, this is what happens when you're reading the testimony that you prepared. She read her testimony. It wasn't from memory. I don't know who let her have notes or who didn't object to it and demand to see them first, but that was a huge oversight on someone's part. She had a story she wanted to tell, and she had her script in front of her, and every time you'd see her look down, she was reading from that script. And she could do that because the defense fed her the questions that they were going to ask. But she couldn't prepare for the state's questions nearly as well. So she just reverted back to her script.
I mean, I'm sorry we have to talk about some unpleasant things, but it'll be over soon enough.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. So, do you recall my last question?
Yes. You were asking me why I was spilling dirt on my dead daughter, and I said I'm not. I said I supported her. I've gone into massive debt in trying to ensure that she had
I appreciate that, but that was a few questions ago.
Oh, you're talking about how Kathy ran away from the Hope House and they found her in the...
No, I'm not talking about that either, but if you listen to my questions,
Just ask the question.
it'll get easier.
Then she had to admit that Kathy was just a mom who wanted a good relationship with Killer Colin.
Your grandson wanted to come live with Kathy and actually was able to, correct?
Yes.
And Kathy was very happy about that, correct?
Yes.
and she felt that she had missed out, understandably so, on multiple years of her son's life, correct?
Yes.
And she was trying to fix or make your grandson's life better.
She was trying to improve his lifestyle, yes.
Then there were questions about the exercise and the push-ups.
You mentioned you described it as a fight in Port Charlotte where law enforcement came because you said your daughter was beating Colin with a belt that made him do sit-ups and push-ups. You remember that?
I did push-ups, and I took away the sit-ups. It was push-ups and putting the weights above his head and running in place.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Now, you remember talking to law enforcement when they came out there, correct?
Yes.
And giving a sworn statement because you just wanted both parties, your grandson and your daughter, you wanted everybody to be safe and healthy and happy, correct?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Detman, as to the root of what the issue was that night, do you remember telling the deputy that the three of you were at the dining room table and Susan had Colin seated down and Kathy told Colin that she would be implementing new parenting rules and Colin would be having his Xbox, his cell phone, and other items taken away as disciplinary action due to him being disrespectful to her? Do you recall telling law enforcement that?
I remember telling law enforcement about the Xbox would be, I don't know if it was taken away, but it was going to be restricted.
And at that time, your grandson didn't want to hear from his mom, and so he stood up and threatened to fight her and said, let's just do it, correct?
That was after the incident with the exercising and belt, the beating of the belt. That's when Kathy wanted us to all sit down and eat sandwiches. Like it literally went from one extreme to another. Sit down and eat sandwiches. And then Colin got up from the table and said, let's just do it. And I went to go get my phone to contact Officer Rentis or Corporal Rentis or Officer Lacey.
Okay.
As to this, the made him do push-ups thing, my drill sergeant would like a word, please. I hardly think that's torture. Sometimes it is good discipline. I have told the story before that when I was in the Army, I was 2 minutes late to a formation. And as a result, I got to run around the formation all the way out to the rifle range and run around the formation holding my rifle over my head all the way back from the firing range. And from that day on, I have not been late to anything. Sometimes exercise and a little bit of humiliation thrown in goes a long way toward modifying behavior, even 50 years later. At the end of the day, though, the facts and the evidence and the jury instructions here are going to decide this case if the jury follows them. But Susan Deathman, that woman is going to have the rest of her life to regret demonizing her dead daughter in court. I have to say, I feel sorry for her. Well, that's what I have for you. Thanks for watching. Catch me back here next time. Thanks for watching my video. If you have a request for me to cover a topic, please send me an email to the address above, and in the subject line put video request. If you have comments, drop them in the comments down below. If you found the content worthy, please consider subscribing. Since I started doing this work, I have always asked listeners to consider doing just one kind thing every day to make somebody else smile or make their life better in some way. Please consider doing that. It makes the world a better place. Now, YouTube has some suggestions for other videos of mine you may find interesting.